Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Awesome Albums with Awesome Andrew. Last month, I got to see the Eagles perform live during the History of the Eagles tour, and it got me really excited to do an Eagles album. So this month, I will be talking about Hotel California. When Hotel California was released, the Eagles were already at the top, and this album pushed them even more over the top. But before I discuss any more history, I suppose I should introduce the band. Let's start with the two big names of the Eagles. That would be Glenn Frey, who did guitars, piano, clavinet, and synthesizer. The other big name, of course, is Don Henley, who did drums and percussion. We also have Don Felder, yes, two Dons in the band, who acted as another guitar player and also did pedal steel guitar. Randy Meisner, who did bass guitar and guitar drone. And let me introduce the newest member of the Eagles, Joe Walsh, who was the third guitar player and also did slide guitar, electric piano, and synthesizer. The Eagles had moderate success until the release of One of These Nights in 1975, which made them huge. Then a brilliant marketing strategy was put in place, a greatest hits. And you're thinking, big deal, every artist has a greatest hits. Yes, that's true. However, in most cases, a greatest hits is released either after the band breaks up or after their popularity has waned a little bit. But in this case, the Eagles' greatest hits 1971 to 1975, the Eagles became legendary. That album sold over 1 million copies a month for 18 months. That's right, over 18 million copies. And at the end of the 20th century, it was the best-selling album of that century. That's right, even more than Michael Jackson's Thriller. With big success comes big egos, and that's what happened to the Eagles. Founding member Bernie Leadon didn't like that success. He wanted the Eagles to be a more underground band, and Glenn Frey wanted different. He wanted them to be as big as they can get. Tension was forming. Bernie got tired of how things were running because he felt that he didn't have a say on what direction the band was going in. And when they were in the studio, they were going over some tracks that they recorded the previous night, and they noticed that he was quiet and not saying anything. So they looked over him and they thought, "What do you think, Bernie?" He says, "I think I'll go surfing." So he did. Tensions between Bernie and Glenn got so intense that Bernie finally left. But before leaving, he pours a beer over Glenn's head. Glenn naturally doesn't want to mess with this guy because the guy's huge and he knows martial arts. Glenn Frey laughs about it now. Bernie says that was awful low of him and he feels bad about it. Bernie got replaced with Joe Walsh, ex-James Gang member. Before Walsh was a member, the Eagles would bring him out on stage occasionally during an encore in one of these big robe boxes, and he would pop out of it. Like, think of popping out of a cake, and would play Rocky Mountain Way, which is a great song, by the way. Life with Joe Walsh was pretty crazy. Walsh was known for trashing hotel rooms, which makes the Eagles not allowed to return to some of those hotels. I mean, I'm talking about throwing the TVs out the window and just overall trashing the place. Don Felder recalls one time where Joe Walsh used the chainsaw that he got for his birthday, which was just really some kind of joke, but anyway, this chainsaw was coming down over Don Felder's bed, like as he's waking up or whatever. Crazy stuff. He even set the record for room trash of $28,000. With all the fun the band had, there was just as much tension too. I'll explain some of that tension while talking about the songs, but I want to go ahead and skip ahead to the touring part, where Randy Meisner felt pressure every time he had to sing Take It to the Limit, probably his biggest song. He was afraid he wouldn't be able to hit those high notes, which he still pulls off in the end, but he still got tired of singing it over and over. Glenn Frey was basically saying, boo-hoo. He says, there are thousands of people expecting to hear that song. Just deal with it. I sing peaceful, easy feeling and take it easy every night. Do you think I don't get tired of it? But there are people in the audience who have been waiting years to hear those songs. Tension got so bad that one time, one concert, Take It to the Limit, was the encore. Randy, of course, wasn't up for it. He was up all night with a couple girls and some vodka. They asked him repeatedly over and over to sing that song, and he just kept refusing. Glenn Frey just started cussing him out, and then a fight broke out. Some police that were backstage were running towards them to break them up, and then Don Henley turns around and is like, "Hey, stay out of this. This is personal, private." In the end, Glenn says, "If you're unhappy, just quit." So he did. Randy Meisner was then replaced by Timothy Schmidt, which is funny. Schmidt replaced Meisner once before in Poco, and now he's replacing him again in the Eagles? Wow. Glenn sat with manager Irving Azoff to get Schmidt to join. It's funny, they didn't really even have him try out before joining, they just wanted him. And Schmidt was really excited, not realizing exactly how much tension the band had or how deep it was. And it was very deep by 78. Now then, I've briefly explained the history of the album, which was a lot. Now, let's talk about the album itself, first starting with that album cover. The hotel shown is the Beverly Hills Hotel, also known as the Pink Palace. It's often visited by Hollywood stars. The photo was taken by photographers David Alexander and John Kosh, who sat in a cherry picker about 60 feet above Sunset Boulevard to get a shot of the hotel at sunset above the trees. The hotel is just a metaphor, but there are several internet theories and urban legends about the real Hotel California, including an old church taken over by devil worshippers, a psychiatric hospital, an inn run by cannibals, and Mr. Crowley's mansion. Heck, some theories suggest the real Hotel California is the Playboy Mansion. Seriously, guys? The gatefold is very interesting. Let's take a look at that. Naturally, there are the 5 members in the middle of a crowded hotel lobby. Fans suspect seeing people in the picture that aren't really there, like spirits or whatever, and oh, hi, Anton LaVey. In the 1980s, some Christian evangelists claimed that the Hotel California referred to the San Francisco hotel purchased by LaVey himself, who converted it into a Church of Satan. Creepy. The back cover shows the same setting as the gatefold, only now it's empty, except for the one custodian cleaning up. Uh-oh, somebody forgot their luggage. You can't leave without your luggage. Oh wait, you can't leave. Period. Wow, I've spent a long time talking about this video and I haven't even talked about any of the songs yet. I guess I should change that. I know I'm going to spend a long time on this first song, so let's just jump right into it. The title track was musically written by Don Felder, and then lyrics were added by Henley and Fry. Felder wanted to write a song where 2 guitars could play off each other. He was sitting on a sofa with an acoustic guitar and used his reel-to-reel tape recorder. He put the recording on a cassette with like 14 or 15 other pieces that he then made a cassette and gave a copy to Don and Glenn. Fry says that usually Felder gives him just cluttered guitar licks and asks, "Where do you sing?" Then came on this tune and they're like, this is interesting. Don Henley said that the intro was like a cross between Spanish music and reggae, and it just really jumped out to him. Fry and Henley decided to put the lyrics to that lick. Fry says that it was Henley that came up with the name Hotel California. The chord sequence you're hearing is not a commonly used progression, and Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull has pointed out its similarity to the song We Used to Know from Stand Up in 1969.
Whenever I get to feel this way, hard to find new words to say. I think about the bad old days we used to know.
In Don Felder's book, Heaven and Hell, he says that they recorded the song about a year after the original demo, and in session, he started to improvise the guitar, and Henley stopped him and demanded that he do it exactly like the demo. And he had to call his housekeeper and have him play the cassette over the phone so that way he could remember what he played. About a minute and a half, Don Henley's voice finally comes in.
Warm smell of colitas rising up through the air.
Colitas translates to little tails in Spanish, and it's a Mexican slang for the cannabis plant. Don Felder explains that when they write the lyrics, they try to write lyrics that touch the multiple senses, things you can see, smell, taste, touch, hear, and the warm smell of colitas is an example of one of those lines targeting that sense of smell.
So I called up the captain, please bring me my wine. He said, we haven't had that spirit here since 1969.
In a 2009 interview, the Plain Dealer music critic John Soder asked Don Henley what the line is about, and also pointing out that wine isn't a spirit, wine is fermented and spirit is distilled, and asked if he regrets those lyrics. Henley responds with, "Thanks for the tutorial, and no, you're not the first to bring this to my attention. My only regret would be to having to explain it in detail to you."
And in the master's chambers, they gathered for the feast. They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast.
This line is really cool. The Steely Knives is a nod to Steely Dan. Steely Dan referred to the Eagles in one of their songs.
Turn up the Eagles, the neighbors are listening.
So the Eagles were just returning the favor.
You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.
Alright, here's that epic line. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And then we have this really great guitar solo. Now, before I end this song, I know what your big question is. What is this song about? Well, I'll just briefly explain what the band says the song is about, and then save some of the theories for the Awesome Album Extras video. How does that sound? Fry and Henley are often asked what the song means. They answer by saying they wanted a song with a deeper meaning. You write songs and send them out to the world, and then somewhere in the song is stuff that's just yours. They often describe it as their interpretation of the high life in LA. Don Henley says in the History of the Eagles documentary that it's a journey from innocence to experience. That's all. Wow. That almost sounds like a letdown compared to the conspiracies out there. But there's no denying that the song isn't. The really cool thing about this guitar solo is that this part here, that was Joe Walsh's contribution. He thought that would be a really cool idea for him and Felder to just kind of play that off of each other, and it's so good. After the song was discovered and it was requested as a single, and they refused to edit this 6.5-minute song, and it eventually did become a single and became a staple in concerts and became one of their best known songs, if not their best known song. New Kid in Town was the first single released for the album. The song became a #1 hit in the US and number 20 in the UK. The single version has an earlier fade out than the album version. Eagles biographer Mark Elliott states that the song captures precise and spectacular moment immediately familiar to any guy who's ever felt the pain, jealousy, insecurity, rage, and heartbreak of the moment he discovers his girlfriend likes someone better than him and has moved on. J.D. Souther, a friend of the Eagles and co-writer of some of the Eagles songs, says they were writing about their replacements and goes on to say it's a story of life. It's the story of aging. My understanding, the song seems to be about Johnny, who was returned after who knows how long to his hometown, and while he was gone, someone replaced him. Even though everyone loves Johnny, they love this new guy even more. And the new guy even gets the girl. I feel that Johnny is starting to get sick of hearing about it as the song goes on. I always thought the origin of the song was pretty funny. Glenn Frey was riding shotgun in a Corvette with a drug dealer known as the Count. And next thing he knew, they were going like 90 miles an hour. And so Glenn starts panicking like, oh man, we're gonna get pulled over, especially since, he's holding, you know what I mean? And so he looks over and he's like, hey man, what are you doing? So then he's like, what do you mean? It's live in the fast lane. And then Glenn thought, yeah, that'd be a good song title. Later on, while in the studio rehearsing, Walsh was playing a finger exercise to warm up, and Fry caught wind of it and asked, hold on, what did you play? Play it again. So then Walsh plays it again, and then Fry decided to build that song around that lick. The song describes a man and woman who had everything but lost it because of their lifestyle. There were rumors that the song is about Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham of Fleetwood Mac. Pun fully intended. They were a couple who broke up when they became famous, although Lindsey never abused Stevie. Nicks did date Henley after she broke up with Buckingham, which just thought that was an interesting random fact, which maybe that's why people assume that's what the song's about. Waste of Time was Henley and Fry's attempt at a Philly soul torch song. Fry said he loved all the records that came out of the Philly area at that time, and he sent some sheet music so that way he can learn some of those songs, and then he started creating some of his own musical ideas with that influence. He points out the strings in the song and says you won't find that in, say, Crosby, Stills and Nash or Beach Boys or other California groups. Speaking of the strings were arranged by Jim Ed Norman. Norman was a friend of Henley's back in Texas who actually became his keyboard player in his first band called Felicity. In the late 90s, Norman rose to the position of president of Warner Reprise Records in Nashville. Don Felder says this once they came up with the concept of Hotel California, some of the other songs just fell right into place, including this one. Once you arrive in LA and you have a couple hits, you become the new kid in town. And then with greater success, you start to live life in the fast lane. And then you start wondering if all the time you've spent in the bars was just wasted time. I feel that wasted time is about a woman who got out of a relationship and she's trying to find someone new. She doesn't really remember how to meet someone, and she's still trying to get over this past relationship. And then she starts wondering if this relationship was just a big waste of time. She finally remembers sometimes to keep it together, we got to leave it alone so you can get on with your search, baby, and I get on with mine, and maybe someday we will find that it wasn't really a waste of time. That's deep. Side 2 of the record has Wasted Time Reprise. It's just a short instrumental track carrying the same tune as the previous track. Don Felder brought the song to the group and he was really excited about it. He was hoping this would be his vocal spot on the album. Don Henley had no recollection of promising anything to anyone. And he says that Victim of Love was simply a record progression that Felder brought him with no vocals and wasn't even a complete song. They recorded him singing over and over and it wasn't up to par with what the band or what Henley wanted. Road manager Irving Azoff took Felder to lunch or dinner, and while the rest of the band goes into the studio to record Henley's vocals, this of course felt like a stab in the back for Felder, who felt they took his song from him. But he also knew he couldn't argue with Henley's vocals. Something really interesting with the song, on the original pressings of the album, Electrica Asylum Catalog number 7E-1084 had engraved text that ran on the run-out groove on both sides of the record. Wait, really? Oh, it does. Okay, so side 1 says, "Is it 6 o'clock yet?" And side 2 says, "VOL is 5-piece live." What does that mean? It means the song was recorded live. The Eagles were accused of being stale and lifeless in the studio, and so they decided to play live in the studio and let people know that they did, and the band confirmed this in their liner notes to the Very Best of the Eagles compilation. Their engineer, Bill Simic, did the engraving. Don Felder says he remembers that he went in the studio and they recorded it live with 5 guys playing. The only thing that wasn't played live was the lead vocal and the harmony on the chorus. Pretty Maids is Joe Walsh's vocal spot on the album. Walsh wrote the song with Joe Vitale, who was his bandmate during Barnstorm. After Walsh joined the Eagles, Vitale contributed to the group as a member of their touring band. Walsh explains to make the Eagles really valid as a band, it was important that we co-write things and share things. Pretty Maids is kind of a melancholy reflection of my life so far, and I think we tried to represent it as a statement that would be valid for people from our generation on life so far. Heroes that come and go. Henley and Fry thought it was a really good song and meaningful and helped me in a lot in putting it together. I feel the song is about realizing that life has passed you by and you wonder where it all went and ask yourself why you had to grow up so fast. Reminiscing on your past, your heroes and people you've met who've come and gone.
Gone are the ribbons and bows.
One interpretation says that it was about Joe's young daughter Emma, who died in an accident in 1974. Wow, that's really sad. Try and Love Again is one of my favorite songs in the album, aside from the title track. This was Randy Meisner's spot for the album. One interpretation says that it's a story of a man who had his heart broken in a previous relationship and is undecided if he wants to fall in love again. The Last Resort is the final track on the album, and it was originally the B-side to Fastlane. In 1978, in an interview with Rolling Stone, Henley says The Last Resort was still one of his favorite songs because he cares about the environment more than, say, about writing songs about drugs or love affairs or excess of any kind. And the gist of the song was that when we find something good, we destroy it by our presence, by the very fact that man is the only animal on Earth capable of destroying its environment. Glenn Frey gives all credit to Henley for writing the song because it's the first time that Don took it upon himself to write an epic story. At the time, they were very concerned about the environment and doing all these anti-nuclear benefit concerts, and Henley wrote the lyrics about how people in the eastern U.S. ruined the West early on. They killed the Native Americans, and the more west America goes, the more commercial it gets. It seemed like the perfect way to wrap up all the different topics explored on Hotel California. So that was Hotel California. Yeah, that video might have ran a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I had a lot to say about it. And this album became the band's best-selling studio album, not to be confused with their 40 million copy greatest hits, but this album still sold over 32 million copies. And that is a lot of copies. And if you haven't bought this album yet, I highly encourage you to do so, because this has been Awesome Andrew telling you why Hotel California is an awesome album, and I will see you guys next time. What? Oh no, I can't leave. I'm stuck here. Oh yeah, I forgot. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave.